Welcome to the Mustard Seed Media video podcast. My name is Bob, and this is the podcast for Drupal web designers. If there is one question I've gotten over and over and over again since I've started this podcast, it's, hey, why don't you do a podcast on panels? And there are two reasons that I haven't done a podcast on panels. The first is that there really hasn't been an official release of panels for Drupal 6. As we're going to see in a minute, there's been kind of like false starts and lots of betas and alphas and all kinds of stuff, but it's never really been finished for Drupal 6, so that was a big reason. But the bigger reason that I always kind of cringed when I heard that was that I don't use panels. And here's why. As a Drupal themer, most of what Panels does, about 90% of what Panels does, is laying out your page, giving you these cool, really flexible kind of layouts that that anybody can sort of lay out and use and stuff like that. You don't have to really dig into the back end. Instead, it's a lot of stuff that I usually do just with HTML and CSS, and as a Drupal themer, that might be how you do it as well. So there may not be a reason for you to really dive into Panels. But at the same time, Panels does a lot of really cool stuff as well. Things like being able to reuse page layouts, to spread panels across a site, to be able to have arguments that you can use in your panels. All kinds of stuff that's really cool that we're going to see as I go through this. But here's the thing, because I don't use panels on a regular basis, I know how it is, I know what it is, I know how it works. I can give you some basic intro. I'm probably not the best guy to intro this. The reason I'm doing it is just because you guys ask so often, and frankly, I want you to stop asking. So I'm going to give this basic overview of what Panels is, how it does. If you have thoughts on this, please share them with the community over at mustardseedmedia.com/podcast and help some people out. So don't take my advice on everything I say here. Don't take it as brutal fact. Instead, just use this as an overview to get your feet wet in Panels. So let's look at it right now and dive right in. So let's look first at the Panels page. Over at drupal.org/project/panels, what you're going to really notice on this page as I scroll down is the massive amount of text that's here. Now, I'm going to speculate a little bit, and it's maybe not so much speculation, that the reason that there's so much text here has to do with the fact that down here, you're not going to see a single Drupal 6 official release for Panels. The author of Panels is not shy in saying that, look, this is not a complete product. This is not something that's finished. We're still trying to work all this out. Panels 2 is dead in the water, as you'll see right here. So Panels 3 is the future. And basically, what you want to note here is just go through all of this stuff, all of this text, and so you really understand where Panels is at and where it's going. There's a lot of really helpful information in there. When you're all done with that, download Panels 3.0 beta, and hopefully it won't break on you. But just take note that this is not a finished product, and it's been a long time coming getting Panels for 6. So what we're going to be showing today is Panels 3. So in Panels 3, there's a couple of modules that you're going to want to start with other than Panels to get up and going. Chaos Tools and Delegator are both modules that you should download and install separately. These are just helper modules for Panels 3. Then when you install Panels, you're going to have 4 different modules that comes with it. Panels, which is obviously the main module. You're going to have Panel Nodes, Mini Panels, and Panels Exporter. Today I'm only going to show Panels, the main module, just because the whole thing is so extensive, I just can't possibly spend the time doing it all. So Panels is sort of the version of this that's been around for a long time. Panels Nodes allows you to turn existing nodes or actual nodes into panels. Mini Panels is sort of like making panels out of blocks. You know, stuff like that. Basically, these little small snippet style panels. And then Panels Exporter, of course, is so you can export your panels once you create them. So there's 2 screens. There's sort of 2 settings, setup screens in Panels in the administration section. If you go to Site Building and then Panels, you're going to get this page here. And this is sort of, as you can see, this is a very unfinished page. This is sort of the Panels configuration screen. Here you can create a couple of new panels, but this is a little confusing. And you can customize system page. Almost at this point, you just want to ignore this screen because it's very unfinished. And I think this is where some people get a little bit confused as to what is going on here. My suggestion, ignore this screen. If you want to use settings, you can go to the settings. And this is just how it'll interact on a taxonomy term pages. But what you want over here is panel pages. So what you can do is you can say, you know, on my site you can only allow these different layouts for the panel when people create new panels. This just gives you a little bit of control over what's being created. So that's really all there is under site building panels. What you want instead is to go to site building pages, which is this page here. And this is really your panel administration screen for all of your panel pages. And so what you can see here, think of this when you're thinking about this whole thing, think of it in terms of the author who wrote this module is the author of views. So there's a lot that's very similar between panels and views. So this looks a lot like the views screen, doesn't it? So you have all of your existing panels. These are system panels, stuff that comes basically shipped with panels. And then you have some custom panels down here, and we're going to deal with those in a second. So what you can do, this is a really cool thing that's fairly new in panels, is you can do things like override your node edit screen. So when people are editing nodes, you can lay this out differently. All of your operations to do that stuff are over here. There's node view screen, so when you're looking at just the node view, you can override that. Taxonomy term pages, this is an alternate method to what we showed on the last podcast about laying out taxonomy term pages. You could use panels to do this. Users, you can lay out your user profile screens. All of these things are to override existing system pages on your site. Instead, usually what we're going to be doing, though, is adding new pages, new panels to the site. Now, something to note, panels, unless you use panels nodes, are not nodes. They're panels. So just don't get confused in in the node add screen if you see panels there or something like that. They are not nodes, so don't get confused on that. So we can add a custom panel page here, or we can add a panel page. Let's look at the difference between these. If we go back to the panels page, it's a little confusing because we have panel page and advanced panel page. Those are the same thing as panel page and custom page. This is the advanced panels page. That probably needs to be updated on its naming scheme. But don't get confused there. But here's the description of the difference. Basically, you have your regular panel, which has existed since panels 1, but then we have this advanced panel page that really what this allows you to do is have different panel layouts depending on maybe who the user is or certain circumstances on the site. You can have different panel pages based on different conditions. That's what this advanced panel page does. So let's go ahead and create a simple, create a simple panel. So this is a multi-step form. You can see that there's the steps across the top. I'm just going to name this my panel, and I'm just going to say, you know, this is my test panel. I'm going to give it a URL because panels are full page views. Now this is something really cool that is in the basic panel but not in the custom panel, is to be able to disable all Drupal blocks and regions. This will more or less get rid of your sidebars and rid of your footer and rid of all these different regions and this is a really nice thing because it'll allow your panel to stretch full width and you don't have to deal with all that stuff. If you want to add some custom CSS ID or some custom code just to this panel, it's better to do it in your style sheet, but you can do it there. So I'm going to continue. None of this, as a note, just like views, none of this is saved until you're done. So you're going to notice that it skipped over argument settings. I went right from page settings to choose layout. If we go back, you'll see that that's because I didn't put an argument. Oh, it's not even going to let me go back now. Let's select the layout. I'm going to choose a 2-column layout and then continue. It'll let me go back later, I guess. And then this is where you add content to your panels. Now, one thing I'm going to say here that's pretty important is that panels are mostly useful when you combine them with views. Really, the best content to put in your panel, at least in most situations, is probably going to be a views block because you can list all kinds of different types of content in there. And it's going to give you some real flexibility. You can use things like views arguments to display what block content will go in that specific panel. Panels is awesome for laying out home pages. So imagine a home page where you have, you know, newest content and upcoming events and a banner rotator. All of that stuff can go within a panel with your home page being a panel. And it's really helpful. So one of the main things you're probably going to want to add into these different sections are views blocks. But if we go ahead and click add, we're going to add content. And you can see that really what these are that we're looking at are different blocks. This is really the blocks page broken down by type of block. So we have our administration or our menu blocks. These are just blocks that exist. Miscellaneous, these are going to be all blocks, basically anything that's not a system block. So these are a couple of views that blocks that views generated for me. And then we've got some Drupal widgets. We can also add nodes, specific nodes. I'm just going to go ahead and add a node to the site. To my panel. So I can just start typing the node name and choose one here. And I can have all kinds of settings that I want. You can put an identifier here. This is pretty cool. It'll add something to the node array that'll tell you what exactly this is, that it's part of a panel. And I'm going to finish. And I just added my node to there. Now I'm going to go ahead and add another one over to this side. I'll add another node just because it's easiest. All I'm doing is I'm starting to type the name of a node, and it'll give me an auto select. So now I have 2 nodes in here. Pretty straightforward. I could also add some other stuff if I wanted. I could add, a piece of a block. Let's add who's new, which is only going to be 1 user, but let's add it. So we can add all kinds of stuff to this. And when I'm all done, actually, let me go over something real quick too. Something else you can do here is change the region style. This is something that's not fully developed yet. You can write new styles for this, but for example, you can say, give me rounded corners. This isn't very robust yet, but in the future, I think it will be. We'll just use the default for now. So when I'm all done, I can hit finish. And in doing so, I just created a panel. So now you'll see that my panel will be listed under panel pages. And it's just right here, /myPanel. So if I go and look at it, it's automatically, something happened. I'm not sure what there, but that should show that other node. But it's automatically listing whatever I showed in this panel. And then to edit the panel, you can simply go in here. Maybe I need to delete this. Maybe it was screwing something up. I can update and return when I'm all done. And you're going to see that that should, that should show that other node in there now. It doesn't. As you see, Panels is still fairly buggy. This is why it's still an alpha or a beta version, because some stuff doesn't quite work right as you do it. So this is how to create a very basic panel. But then once you create the panel, you can go back and jump to the different settings. Now what you can do that's really cool in your URLs is you can actually use arguments. So I could do something like, something like that. And then I can replace this with an argument under my argument settings here. And it's going to tell me I have no arguments because I didn't save that. But basically you can insert arguments into your URL and then reference things like your views arguments or things like that to do all of this. So adding, if I go back to my, my panel setup and I add a custom panel, really it's the exact same thing. The only difference is I can now have these different, I have access control. That's pretty cool. I'm going to continue. I can add a menu item. I'm going to say no. But then I have these task handlers. This is really, really cool. So this is where I was talking about earlier that you can have different panels based on different states of your site. So different users or different whatever. So I'm going to just, I can go ahead and I can create multiple handlers. And I'm going to hit finish. And what this is going to do is allow me to create a couple of different handlers, which is basically, you can think of them as a couple of different displays for your site. So you can have other things beside panels create handlers. Right now, only panels is doing it. But I can say for this user role, for authenticated users, for example, yep, that's good. And then I can say if they're authenticated user, that criteria must pass, and I can hit continue. And then I can lay out a panel just for authenticated users. This is very cool because it allows me to have different panels for different users. So if I just finish that, what I can do then is I can add another one. I'll add a new handler. And I can say, this is for anonymous users. And then I can continue. And I can create a different one for anonymous users. And you add content to that and whatever. So now what I have is I have 2 different panels based on these conditions. Those conditions are what you're going to have when you have these task handlers. So that's a very basic overview of panels. Basically, you just create a bunch of your panels, you can export panels, you can do all kinds of stuff, and you have all these different handlers and conditions. It's a pretty complex system. Again, you've seen it's a little bit buggy, but go ahead and play with it. I think it's a pretty cool module. I actually have toyed with the idea of starting to do this. At the same time, if you're a themer, and you're already laying out all your blocks and stuff exactly where you want them, you might be going, maybe there's not much use for this. And you're not wrong. In a lot of cases, there might not be much use for it for someone who can really do all their layout themselves. But give it a try. Play with it. The argument stuff is fun to play with. You can match your views, blocks, arguments with arguments in the panels, all that kind of stuff. Go ahead and comment on this episode over at mustardseedmedia.com/podcast. Let me know what you think. If you want to do some advanced panel stuff, I might be able to do that in the future. Let me know. Otherwise, go ahead and add your tips and tricks to panels. Again, I'm not the best resource here because I don't use it on a daily basis. Hopefully, it was a little bit helpful to get you going on panels. Jump over and visit my audio podcast over at geeksandgod.com. That is it. We'll see you next time on the Mustard Seed Media Video Podcast.